Today is another day for NFA Live. Welcome, everybody. And as usual, I've got a little bit of a bankrupt, but I'm joined again by my compatriots, Ben from Into the Cryptoverse and Guy from Coin Bureau. Gentlemen, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Rob. Rob, there's an air of there was a slight air of weariness in your voice there.
Yeah, because it's a little, well, you're right, because it's a little weary right now because of what we're going through and the topics we're going to get into. I got to tell you, this is not going to be a very popular show. And just sit back and listen to the things that are saying. And of course, you're welcome to sound off in the comment section. So we're going to go over a lot of things. We're going to go over this subject about crypto versus banks, things that are happening. This is not going to go over well. CBDCs, and are we missing something good for them? We're going to talk about 2-year, the Treasury and the rate hikes. Talk about, is this a bull run or BS? And then finally, we get to the mentality, which I think is honestly probably the most important part. So, yeah, let's start with this. Crypto versus banks. And when I was thinking about this, it's because we've seen a big collapse of 3 different banks, right? We've seen it with Signature, Silvergate, and Silicon Valley Bank. And there's a narrative out there. And one of those narratives is that crypto is behind or is the linchpin that has destroyed everything or is destroying everything. So the question I have for you gentlemen is this. Did crypto put these banks in danger, or did the banks put themselves in danger? And if so, why do people only hear about one side of the story, and how can we shift that narrative? This is a touchy subject, I'm sure, but we'll start. Ben, I want to start with you, and then we'll go with Guy, because after this one, Guy, I want to talk to you about your CBDC video you just did. All right, Ben, what do you think?
I mean, my opinion is that crypto had no part in putting these banks in danger. I'm of the opinion actually that crypto does not bring these bad things. I mean, put it this way, like the way I think about it is this. If someone is going to do bad things, if they're going to make poor financial decisions, right, they don't need crypto to do that. Crypto could just be an excuse to do that. So crypto might bring stuff to the surface, but that behavior was already there. Crypto is just sort of the vehicle that brought that poor behavior to the surface. And so, yeah, my opinion on this is that crypto is it can be the scapegoat, I think, to sort of say, well, this is the reason. But oftentimes it's just because it's this unknown. A lot of people don't really know what crypto is. It's just this thing that a lot of people make risky investments in. But I think it's ultimately the scapegoat. And I believe that with a lot of these banks, especially ones that were showing, weakness recently, and some of them went down, I know that they have ties to crypto, and that's like the on and off ramps for crypto. But I'm not really of the opinion that crypto led to their problems. To me, it doesn't really seem like, again, I think it's a way to just have a scapegoat and to say, crypto is the reason for all this mess. So that other people can rationalize, why you guys made mistakes. So I mean, I don't really have anything much more insightful than that. I mean, it's just it's the same thing with being like a politician or something. People who go into politics who do things, being in that field can just bring the stuff out of people that was already there. Okay. Right. It doesn't necessarily mean that the thing itself is bad, but it can bring stuff out. And so that's what I ultimately think is happening with crypto. And I think we're at the phase right now where the cryptoverse as a whole is in a very precarious position, because we're trying to figure out, who we are, like what is the cryptoverse. And a lot of the people that trusted crypto a year ago don't really trust crypto anymore. And so it's going to take some time, I think, to build back that trust. But I think we can build it back as long as we, try to do it correctly this time and not have the industry fall for the same mistakes that we've fallen for the last couple of cycles.
Yeah. And then bonus, just real quick, do you think this is the things that are going on? You talk about trust, and just real quick, Do you think that the things that we went through we'll be able to remember and actually push on to the next investor, or do you think it'll just be lost? Kind of just like how we had with the Mt. Gox situation. Everybody said, don't leave everything on centralized exchanges. And what did we do? We left it on centralized exchanges. So do you think that we can actually remember this, or do you think it's just going to be like goldfish memory and then it just gets lost in the background?
I think we're going, at the risk of saying this time is different, right? I think that this time might be different in some sense. And the idea that because crypto has gone so mainstream right now, a lot of the mistakes that were made this cycle are going to be remembered because, like people are getting involved this time. A
Right.
lot of the banking sector, again, has been sort of cut off from the cryptoverse. They're turning the liquidity off. And so I almost feel like we're going to be forced to remember it. Whereas in 2017, 2018 and 2014, it just really hadn't gone mainstream yet. And so, some different places went down, but it didn't really lead to any change. People just kept doing it every single cycle. This time, I think next cycle, it's not like the fluff of some of that the same type of stuff will likely go away. That doesn't mean that we can't have something else, though. It's the thing, like there could always be something else that is ends up being detrimental. But to some degree, it seems like what's the likelihood that at least a company in the United States, right? What's the likelihood that they're going to be able to pop up within the next year, hopefully before another cycle, and do the same exact thing that these other companies did that all went under? I think there's going to be a little bit more oversight, and I don't want us to make the same mistakes again. I mean, we really need to purge all the garbage and try to move up, in a more sustained way.
Gotta agree. Guy, same thing here. So well said, Ben. With this thing, the cryptoverse banks, what's the issue here, and why is the narrative kind of being shaped in this way? Because I know that you've talked a lot about in your channel Operation Choke Point 2.0, and then also I'll just remind everybody, this was a tweet that you just put out just recently, where you said this. You said, "Look, oops, hold on, I should probably bring up that screen." You said, "Just so you know, we've got the FDIC is planning on selling Signature Bank to a mega bank in the coming days. But one of the conditions is that the mega bank must cancel Signature Bank's crypto services." So again, the banks versus crypto, it looks like there's a full-on war. How do we get over this? And was this the issue? Was crypto the problem?
Well, at the risk of sounding obviously biased, but I think there are two suspects here. Crypto. I'm with Ben 100%. This is not a crypto problem. This is first and foremost on the banks, especially in SVB's case, because they didn't hedge correctly. They had they were invested in long dated treasuries, and they should have known that those treasuries would go down in value as interest rates rose. And, they knew that interest rates were going to rise. But having said that, I think the other guilty party here, to a large extent, is the Fed, because I think they initially dismissed inflation, didn't they? They said this is transitory. And then because they'd been slow out of the gates, they had to hike much more aggressively than they would have done. And if I remember rightly, this was the fastest, in percentage terms, this was the fastest interest rate hike in history. So that's how behind the curve they were. So although I'm hesitant to say I sympathize with the likes of SVB, I do to some extent, because they parked their assets in what they thought were the safest place. And they got caught out because the Fed had to, the Fed basically dropped the ball. Yeah. So this is 100% not crypto's problem. I see it like a murder's taken place. Someone's been shot, and the cops are swarming all over the scene, and they've arrested the first innocent bystander, who saw everything, who just so happens to be crypto. I think it's very much a failing of the banks. It's a failing of the fractional reserve system. And I think that is one of the reasons why crypto has become such a scapegoat. I think for a start, crypto is an easy scapegoat. It's something that has an image problem. Let's face it. I think we've talked about crypto's image problem a number of times in these live streams before. And there's no denying it. It does have an image problem. A lot of people are suspicious of it. A lot of people, unfortunately, have lost money on it in the past. And so that makes it, first and foremost, an easy scapegoat to make. Oh, it's crypto again. But also, I think crypto is getting the rap because otherwise you kind of have to blame the system in a way. You have to blame the whole edifice. And if that was the case, if they were to come out and be honest about it and say, look, this is a failure of the banking system, the Fed hasn't done its job properly, or the Fed was slow out of the gates, then perhaps you risk shaking confidence in the system even more. And obviously that is how bank runs start. It's all about confidence, isn't it? As soon as consumer confidence goes, as soon as depositors are worried about their holdings, that's it. And it's a race to the bottom. So yeah, I think those are the two sort of main reasons why crypto has got the rap unfairly.
Okay, perfect. So this will lead me to the next point, because you talked about pretty much jumping to conclusions, right? Someone gets arrested, there's a murder, let's arrest the very first person, right? We're going to jump to conclusion. Before though we do get on that, there was one I saw some in the comments about people saying, well, with all these banks going down, who's going to be able to bank crypto? I mean, first of all, for retail, like everybody can. I mean, most of the banks are taking it, but for like the big institutions, the Coinbase, the Krakens, things like that, there's a couple of things. First of all, don't be fooled. This is from You Got ETH. This individual works at Coinbase, does the wallet as a service. He goes, hey, look, just because a couple of the banks shut down, just remember that United Texas Bank, Western Alliance, JP Morgan Chase, and Bank of New York Mellon all have crypto businesses as customers. And then just this morning, Fidelity came out and said, look, if you want to trade with Bitcoin, we can do that on our platform. This is for retail customers, which is open to millions of people. So if we talk about the banks, they can have the narrative, that's fine. But the thing that you said, Guy, where you said, let's not jump to conclusions. There was this video that you put out in this really snazzy shirt. And you said, look, CBDCs are almost here. And you talked about pretty much what they are and the negative parts of it. So the question I had was this. This is not going to be popular. So CBDCs, are we missing something that's positive as far as a central bank digital currency coming out? And are we just jumping the gun, or is this all 100% bad? And just kind of give us like a quick overview about this video.
Sure. Are we missing something positive?
I gotta ask the question.
I guess. I mean, the big selling point with CBDCs is going to be convenience, and there is no doubting that they are going to be convenient. And any government rolling out their CBDC properly will make it easy to use, and will make it easy for people to access. And let's face it, people take the path of least resistance. Not everyone, but plenty of people do. Yeah, people's lives are, I think, in a lot of cases, difficult enough without having to struggle with alternative systems of money. And it's going back to what you and Ben were talking about just a few minutes ago. How do we educate people? How do people how do we stop making the mistakes that we did last time? And I think one of the problems is that crypto is not very user-friendly at the moment. You've got things like setting up a wallet. I've talked to people. I mean, sorry, Rob, go on.
No, just say exactly. This is the thing that people talk to me about. Like, well, I just haven't used crypto. I'm like, have you tried to use a DEX as a normal average person? It's something just ridiculous. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I mean, things like setting up a wallet, setting up your own hardware wallet. I've spoken to a few people. It's like, oh yeah, I've got one. I'm a bit nervous about the whole process. And I think, well, maybe I've just set up one hardware wallet too many, and I'm blasé about it. But it is pretty straightforward. But then I'm used to it. So I guess it's about, part of it is going to be and this is why so many people are happy to stick with the fiat system that we have. But people like Visa and MasterCard have done an excellent job of making everything quick and easy. And especially when you consider all of the shenanigans happening behind the scenes. I remember making a podcast episode about this a while ago now, talking about the process of what happens if I were to send one of you guys $10, or if I was to send, someone £10 in the UK or whatever it is. It's so complicated. There is so much going on behind the scenes. And when you tap your card in the store and your payment goes through, we don't see anything. It's just tap and gone. It's so easy, but there's so much happening behind the scenes, and that's what they've done. They've made it easy. They've made it convenient. They've made it the path of least resistance. So going back to CBDCs, sure. I mean, I think they will make it easy. People will go, well, why make my life more complicated than it needs to be? And I think, to be fair, digging into CBDCs a little bit, and they're all, so many places are in various stages of development. I mean, we could see some CBDC projects as soon as next year. Remember, China already has a CBDC pilot up and running, and I think it's really telling that China was sort of first to the party there. I think that says everything that you need to know about the direction that CBDCs are going to take us in. So, yeah, it's. I think they'll make it easy to start with, and I think they'll make it quite benign to start with, because if you start introducing. Having said that, the UK, which is pushing ahead, they recently admitted that there's the Bitcoin project is fairly well advanced. What a name, eh? And they admitted at one point that holdings would be limited to $10,000, and. Sorry, £10,000. I beg your pardon.
Right.
And everyone went, "What?" And that was just, that was a glimpse into how these things will work. And just imagine the government being able to see everything going in and out of your wallet, in and out of your account. You could argue that, well, banks can already see that, and if a government wants to get that information, then it's probably not that difficult. I still think, especially, and I think in places like, in so many countries that don't have authoritarian governments, it's easy to take these sort of things for granted. But believe me, it's going to allow for unprecedented amount of oversight, because nothing reveals more about you, more about your life, who you are, what you do, than your spending habits. It tells a government, it tells any observer everything they need to know.
Excellent. So yeah, I got to agree with you. It's the mass of people will say, well, this is easy, this is cheap, this is fast, I'm going to stick with this. And it's going to work out pretty well for them until, and this is something that you talked about in the actual video itself. And everybody who's watching right now, there's a link in the description. You can check out that video of the CBDCs, but it was this part that got me. And he said, digital pounds could protect consumers in bank runs, meaning we're going to be able to shut this off so bank runs can't happen. And that right there, I was like, okay, it's going to be cheap, fast, and easy, and people are going to get used to it. But then when this happens one time, then people will actually wake up. So excellent, excellent response, Guy. Thank you so much. Ben, same thing. Well, are we missing something good that me and Guy just missed as far as CBDCs?
I mean, I think you guys said it. I mean, I think the main advantages are that it would be more efficient. The disadvantage of it being more efficient is that it's going to put some people out of work, that might be in jobs that are required because of the current inefficiencies. I think that, it can make transactions cheaper. But the problem, the problem that I see with it, of course, is that you're going to have increased surveillance. And, I don't want the government to be able to just see at any given time what anyone in the country is doing with their money. I feel like it gives, too much control. And yeah, I mean, the funny thing is a lot of the benefits that CBDCs can provide it's funny because it's like, well, yeah, like crypto provides a lot of that without the surveillance part of it, without the surveillance aspect of it, which I think is why a lot of people like crypto. So yeah, I mean, like there are some benefits, but some of the consequences are quite a lot. And I mean, it would certainly take some getting used to if we transition to something like that. But just knowing that everything you do is watched like a hawk, I'm sure would make some people somewhat uneasy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
I think there would be.
No, go
Sorry,
ahead.
I think there would be so many ways to sell it as well to certain sections of the population. Like, let's say you could, they could, because these things are going to be so programmable. There's going to be so much that they can do with them that's so manipulated. They could start with something that would probably make sense to a lot of people. They could say, all right, well, gambling is a huge problem in this country, so you won't be able to spend your CBDC, you won't be able to spend Bitcoin at any gambling outlets. You won't be able to spend it at the bookies or at the horses or whatever. A lot of people would say, well, that's not a bad thing. Gambling is bad. Gambling it ruins lives. Gambling, causes all sorts of social problems. That makes perfect sense to me. And then it's a slippery slope. And you start with one thing that's kind of fairly popular. Okay, you can't spend it in gambling. What's next? You can't spend it on alcohol, for instance. And all of a sudden, it's you can't stop. It's a genie, I don't think, that could be put back in the bottle. So that's one of the that's one of the main things that I have a real problem with about it. There's just no stopping once you've started down that route.
Yeah, and everybody that talks about CBDCs, they go, you're just paranoid. It's not going to be like that. But I got to tell you, every time that we felt like the government couldn't do something, well, they just go ahead and do it. I mean, remember, Canadian truckers got shut down for their GoFundMe campaign just at the whim of the government. Like, I didn't know they could do that. They can do whatever we give them power to. But remember, they work for us, and that's a big difference. And then before we go on, what we just talked about as far as the narrative, it all comes through education. Right. So the things we talk about, cryptoverse banks, that narrative, that's why, it's important that we talk about it. The second thing about CBDCs, people are gonna be like, this is great. And then we have to remind them of what the potential downfalls are. So that takes care of the lighter stuff. Let's go into a little bit of macro. 2-year treasury and rate hikes. And Ben, I'm going to start with you because we just left off. We've seen, if we take a look at treasury yield curves, once there's an inversion, of course, something like this, then we start to see at some point, this is an indicator of a recession. And we inverted the 10 and 2, I think in June or July of 2022, usually happens in 12 months or so. But just recently, we've seen the 2-year, the fastest drop I think it's ever done since 2008 or 1981, I can't remember. But it went from 5% in March 8th to 3.93. So the question then becomes, the 2-year treasuries come down. Because of this, does the market think that, and especially everything that's going on, that the Fed can't raise rates? Do you think that this is the last of the 25, 50 basis point hikes? And do you think that, higher for longer narrative is dead? So Ben, what do we got here?
Well, it's funny because one of the things we've seen happen many, many times is the market not really believe what the Fed is saying. And we're kind of seeing that again, but there is a slight difference this time than say the last 10 times that the market didn't believe the Fed. And that is the fact that there's signs in the economy that there's some cracks showing, right? Like they're clearly by venturing out into the most rapid increase in interest rates that we've really ever seen, it was bound to have some effects. And one of the things we've said many times is that it takes about a year for those interest rate hikes to fully be felt by the economy. It takes about 1 year. And now we're 1 year out from the first 25 basis point rate hike that occurred in March of 2022. So we still have, several more months of feeling the full effects of the last interest rate hikes. So, my opinion is the Fed, they can raise. I don't think they're going to go with 50. I think that maybe 50 could have been an idea, but with what happened recently with the financial sector, I don't think there's a chance at all. They're going to do 50 basis points at the next meeting. I think that the question becomes: are they going to do 25 or are they going to just go with 0? I'm actually I would say I'm of the opinion they'll probably go with 25 is my guess. But I think they might be able to get away with doing 0 as well. And I don't say that lightly. I mean, I've been quite hawkish myself for over a year as to what the Fed needs to do. But I do think there is some evidence that inflation is coming back down. Now, you're not gonna find that evidence in the core CPI that we got, and some of the other places. But I think if you incorporate the lag on some of these sectors, I think they're going to come down quite quickly. And one of the reasons I think they're going to come down quite quickly, probably in the latter half of this year, is because I think there's a good chance we're going to be in a recession. Latter half of this year or the first part of 2024 at the latest. And you showed the chart earlier, the inversion of the 10-year and the 2-year yield, or you sort of alluded to it. And it's been inverted. Yeah, like if you go to treasury yield spreads right above the treasury yield curve, and then you flip it over to the spread on the 10 and 2-year. So yeah, flip it to the 10 and 2-year. So normally when it inverts, we're not in a recession. And so this is the thing, is like people say, well, the treasuries, these yields, they've inverted, therefore it's a recession. It's not true. Remember, it's always upon the uninversion is usually when the recession occurs. And it hasn't happened yet, but it's moving up quite quickly. And so I think that the Fed, there's a good chance they've already done enough damage to send us into a recession. Like I think it's possible that the damage has already been done. And given the lags of monetary policy, it might take us another 3 to 6 months to fully feel the effects of that. So I think they're probably going to go with 25, and then they might go with it. Put it this way: if they go with 25 at the next meeting, then I think they're only going to really be able to go 25 one more time after that. Is my guess, because I don't think with the political pressure that will be mounting, especially after this most recent scare with a run on the banks, I don't think they're going to be able to go too much higher. But I think where the market is really disagreeing with the Fed right now is the rate cuts. I mean, if you look at the probabilities on the rate cuts, the market is saying that the Fed's going to cut rates in June. I mean, the Fed has been clear that they have no intention on cutting rates in June. And so what I think is going to happen is the Fed might hold out longer than people think, and we're basically just going to be begging for them to cut, and by the time they finally do, hopefully inflation, they've broken the back of inflation. And I think there's already some signs of that in some sectors, but in other sectors, the signs really aren't there yet. But then if you incorporate the lag, so the reason we go into a recession normally is just because the Federal Reserve does too much. They become too hawkish, and they push us into a recession. And I think that's what you're going to see play out this time as well. And by the time they cut, why do they cut? Is because they've broke something. So the reason the market is saying they think the Fed's going to cut in June is because they think the economy is going to fall apart between now and then.
Right.
Because otherwise, why would the market disagree with the Fed? I mean, Powell literally just came out this past week in front of Congress and said that they're going to go higher for longer. And he even insinuated that with incoming data, they might even raise the pace back to 50. Now, I think if he had given this testimony this week, I don't think he would have said that, because it would have been after the stuff with the Silicon Valley Bank. But the market is clearly saying, the market thinks something bad's going to happen, between now and June. And then they're saying, well, because this bad thing's going to happen, the Fed's going to be forced to cut. And now finally, I think we're in a new phase of the cycle right now. Like I think we've transitioned, and I think you can see it in crypto as well. You know, the altcoins, the more speculative plays are bleeding back to Bitcoin. And I think that we're going to see just how much Powell meant what he said, you know, higher for longer, because, you know, the market's expecting cuts in June. I would suspect and I know this, I'm going to say, I think we're probably going to get a cut this year, but I don't know if it's going to come as early as June. But I do think that at some point later on this year, we're likely going to see a cut. Just because the pressure will mount and the economy is going to be screaming for it. Let's just hope that inflation is under control between now and then, because if it's not, then it might make the Fed go further. But furthermore, if inflation is not under control between now and then it would likely just lead to a period similar to the 70s, where you get inflationary waves. And you know, we had an inflationary wave. And then if the Fed's forced to cut before inflation is curtailed, then we can have another inflationary wave in the next cycle, like let's say out in 2025, 2026. And that's something we really want to avoid. So that's kind of where I am. Those are my thoughts on the matter. Hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah. So I'll say like this, like the 25 basis points, it could be. So I guess the question I have would be for Guy is this, is do you think that if it's only 25 basis points, is that enough? Or do you think that Powell has to go further? Or do you think like, look, this is as good as it's going to be, and it's just going to be this for like a long time as far as inflation? Because like what Ben said, I don't think we're going to get inflation under control anytime soon. Guy, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with Ben, I think. And let's, of course, remember, you know, okay, we could be staring down the barrel of the economy breaking, of a really bad recession, but runaway inflation is way worse than, you know, than anything pretty much a recession can throw at us, I think. So I think that's worth bearing in mind. I too think probably a 25 point rise at the meeting next week, that would kind of round off inflation at round off rates at 5%.
Right.
So the kind of headline inflation number at the moment is 6%. So I wonder whether the Fed's best move is to raise at the next meeting, bring us up to 5%, and then keep it at that figure, keep it at 5%, keep rates at 5% for as long as they possibly can, at least until that headline inflation figure comes down. Because the drop to the Fed's 2% target that's a long way to go. But the drop to 5%, so rates are in line with inflation, that's a lot more doable on the face of it, I think. So I wonder whether, I think there's a good chance that could be the strategy that they're going to take. Bring us up to 5%, and then see if they can at least get inflation down to the same level as rates, and then perhaps they can talk about dropping rates after that.
Yeah.
And we were talking off air, weren't we, before we came on? You know, just what a tough situation Jerome and the rest of the Fed are in at the moment, because whatever they do, if they pause rate hikes, if they raise by 25, even if they were to bring rates down, which obviously isn't going to happen at this meeting, you know, they're going to cop it from someone. I think though, I think the Fed's credibility is important though, and that's something I'm kind of factoring in as well. And I wonder whether to pause now would be seen as kind of as reactive rather than proactive. You know, Jerome has said time and time again, as Ben said, you know, that his testimony in front of the Senate Banking Committee was pretty forthright. You know, he was talking about higher for longer there. Obviously, this was before the events of last week and over the weekend. Right. But I still think Fed credibility is really important, because, as we were discussing earlier, they lost that credibility. They suffered a real dent to it because of transitory inflation. So is this their chance to get it back? Is this their chance to be seen to be controlling the narrative and going, we're not going to just react, we're not going to panic and stop these rate hikes and take our eye off the ball when it comes to inflation, just because, you know, something in the system appears to be breaking? Because, I mean, that's what Jerome has said, you know, he's prepared to push the economy that far. He's prepared to break something in order to beat inflation, and something's broken. And I think probably staying the course is something that is what he'll really want to do.
Yeah. You know what? So all the things we just talked about, I just was thinking about this because if Jerome's going to come out, I forgot, I want to say it was Senator Eisen. I forgot. It was some lady who was asking Jerome Powell, and they said, why is 2% your goal? What does that do for my constituents? Explain to me how this works out. And he was kind of fumbling around like, well, with 2%, it's kind of important. But the main thing that I took out of this, like his rambling of like 3 minutes, was this: it's all a confidence game. And if we don't put confidence into the markets, then people will distrust and they will move away. And then, of course, that leads to a collapse. So I think, like in all these things that we're talking about, let me just throw you guys a quick question. Answer how you want to. If this is just a confidence game, what if we could just move the narrative and go, hey, 3% is not so bad, and we'll keep it going like that. Not a big deal. We'll get over it. We're the most powerful nation in the world. If you could shape it like that, could people just go, well, I guess it's okay, and move forward? Anybody want to take that ridiculous question?
Well, I mean, a lot of
I think that would be a terrible move. I think 3%. As soon as people see the target is movable, as soon as people see the target is arbitrary or whatever, then I think you have confidence going. And I think that's why Jerome is so bangs on about the 2% target so much. It is a confidence game, but again, it's about credibility. And I think as soon as you lose that, it's a slippery slope. If the target moves once, it can move again, right? 3%, 4%, 3.5%. Where does it stop? So, yeah, I think the target. I think credibility is important. Sorry, Ben, I talked over you there.
Oh no, it's fine. I mean, I think that people have speculated on that for a long time, and every single time Powell gets asked, he says no. Like we're not gonna change our mind on this. I mean, I suppose they could be forced to, but I think the most likely answer is just that their goal is to go back to 2% and not to change that. Because I mean, again, the higher inflation is only going to hurt people more in the long run. It's going to make things more unaffordable, and so I think you have to get back to 2%.
We'll see if we can. Well, Ben, since you're up there, and we're talking about inflation, and we're talking about the upcoming potential recession. Not saying that's what it is. A lot of the proponents and a lot of the crypto area have said this. Look, this is the bull run, baby. We're back, and we're going to start from here, and it's going to keep going up. So the question I have is this: I know you believe that there is a recession coming. Can crypto get through that recession? And then I'm also going to challenge you on this one. What about the old adage, sell in May and go away? Is that also an option on the table if you think that in Q3, Q4 we have a recession?
Let me phrase it like this, okay? First of all, this happens every cycle. We always get ahead of ourselves. We did in 2015. We did in 2019 as well. Yeah, and I don't really see it. I don't really see it being any different this time. With that said, I think the stage is being set for another bull run in crypto, just based on all the events that we're going through right now. I mean, I think it is bullish for crypto, but the part that we have to get through is the recession. Right. It was the same thing with the .com crash. Look back 20 years ago. Tech stocks were I mean, we can look at things now, right? 20 years later. And can anyone imagine the world without some of the giants that are from the giant tech companies? You can't, right? Like they're so intertwined with everything that we do. But despite their potential, they still went down in one more leg because of a recession, right? And actually, they went down another leg after that, but that could have been because of the some of the geopolitical things that went on back in 2001. But I think that the stage is being set for a crypto bull run, and I think crypto is probably going to go through some type of a renaissance. I'm going to guess in 2024 is when it's going to start, because I think it'll come after the rate cuts is when the renaissance for crypto begins. And you can see this is already happening right now. If you look closely at if you look closely at Bitcoin and the dominance of Bitcoin, and you look at alt Bitcoin pairs, you can see that altcoins are bleeding back to Bitcoin right now. So right now what you're seeing is this flight to safety. If you think about Bitcoin as your safety net, in crypto. I mean, I think Bitcoin and cash, but if Bitcoin's this flight to safety, that's why the dominance is going up. We saw the same thing last cycle as well. And that's honestly a sign to me that the Fed is finally having the desired effect that they want to have, is removing liquidity from the system. And now that liquidity is being removed, these altcoins are having trouble keeping up with Bitcoin. And again, we saw the exact same thing last cycle. And so and if you go up to include stable coins, click on no up there at the top. Yeah, click on no. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. So Bitcoin includes stable coins. No.
Yeah, and you can see it's basically at 51%, and it's likely going to go a lot higher. So, I think, and this is, by the way, this is good for the altcoin market in the long haul, because once we get to a higher dominance, that's when the dominance has more room to go down, and the altcoin market can go up again. So I don't think we're getting into a sustained bull run right now. Not as, I mean, if you call 2019 a bull run, right, then you could theoretically call this one as well. But I don't think this is the run that's taking us to new highs. I think we're going to have one more scare, one more. And I'm guessing with Bitcoin anyways, with altcoins, who knows how many we'll have. But with Bitcoin, I think we're going to have one more scare. I think it's probably going to come the latter half of this year. And then we'll be off. I think we'll be off to the races. I mean, we're going to have so many things going for us by the end of this year. We're going to have rate cuts by the Fed, which again, when they cut rates, it's not the most bullish thing in the short term, but for equities, but for crypto normally bottoms before equities. If you look at like 2018, if you look at March of 2020, I believe crypto bottoms before equities. And so, yeah, I think by the end of this year and early next year, we're going to have these rate cuts, which short term might not be the most bullish thing, but you fast forward 3 to 6 months, they're usually pretty bullish. You're going to have the Bitcoin halving in sight. And this is a good chart to show that normally when the Fed pivots, it's not a good thing. But why? You have to think, why is it not a good thing? It's because normally when they pivot, they broke something, and then they just have to flush the money with liquidity again. It can take a little while to sort of see. I mean, look, if it can take like 6 to 12 months to feel the effects of rate hikes, then it can take a while to feel the effects of rate cuts as well. And looser monetary policy. So I don't really think we're heading to new highs this year. I think we're going to continue to face these macro headwinds, especially the recession. But on the other side of the recession, you look at the NASDAQ and look what happened on the other side of the recession, right? It up and to the right. I mean, yes, we had the financial crisis in 2008 and 2009, but it was up and to the right for the next 20 years. So I think, I know everyone calls me super bearish, but I would argue that there's been plenty of reasons to be bearish, for the last, 14, 15 months. Late this year, early next year, I think we go through a crypto renaissance, but I think we have to go through the recession first, which is likely going to happen. And then on the other side of that, I think crypto is going to be stronger. I think Bitcoin and Ethereum will be stronger than they were before, because they'll no longer be able to point to the fact that we've never experienced a recession, right? So once we've experienced one and Bitcoin still exists, it's like, well, what's your excuse now? What's your excuse now as to why Bitcoin's still here? So it's going to have an effect on the altcoin market more so. And I think you're going to see some altcoins die off. And I think just like the .com crash coming out of that recession, what did you have to see before the next bull run? You had to see real world utility. So that's where I think we're headed. I think this is a necessary part, and it'll go a long way, I think, in purging the garbage from the cryptoverse. And we should be better off for it, in about 12 months.
Yeah. And then, Guy, before I move on, Ben's got this video, Altcoin Reckoning, and he goes over the history of some of the top 10s that you will never hear again over the years in this video, and why there's an altcoin reckoning. So that's the great video. Guy's the CBDC one. But Guy, so the same thing here. Is this the bull run happening? Can we go through it? Or is there something else that you just whatever? And then here's another question I'll tag on to you. Is this what you want to see for your portfolio? Would you like to see us go lower?
Well, first up, yeah, I think Ben said, he's had plenty of reasons to be bearish. We've had plenty of reasons to be bearish over the last 14 to 15 months, I think he said. I would add to that and say we've had plenty of reasons to be bearish over the last 7 to 14 days.
True.
We've been the crypto industry in the US, which, let's face it, let's remember, is crypto's largest market by a long way. The crypto industry there has been effectively set back 10 years in banking terms. It's being locked out of the banking system, um, but a coordinated action by the administration. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Signature, it's becoming clear, was taken out deliberately, because of its crypto connections. So there are some huge headwinds for the industry there in terms of banking. Let's not forget the SEC's Wells notice on Paxos. That 30-day period, I think, has expired now. So, I mean, what happens now? Is the SEC going to sue Paxos over BUSD? Are they going to go after some other stablecoin issuer? They could use the events over the weekend with USDC. That could be, that could quite well be a precursor to something worse. So, yeah, I completely agree with Ben's timeline. Long term, I'm extremely bullish, but in the short term, I think we have some huge hurdles to overcome. And and then that's without even touching upon things like high rates and all the rest of it, and all the kind of macro factors. Just the crypto specific factors in the US and elsewhere, I think, are worrying enough. There are good things on the horizon for crypto, but the time frame is a bit longer than I think a lot of people are thinking. It's not. I don't see it being in the next sort of 3 or 4 months or so. In the next, until next year, when things have improved. And of course, we're also seeing things like exchange inflows are climbing. We've seen a lot of even BTC heading to exchanges recently, which I think is something I'm going to be keeping an eye on. In answer to your question, is this what I want to see in terms of my portfolio? Yeah, I guess so. I want to, I want the opportunity to pick up more. I wish I'd kind of picked up a bit more in the wake of FTX, when BTC went down to, what was it, around 17K. And I held off a bit because I thought, well, this could well go lower. I mean, hindsight is a wonderful thing, isn't it? But yeah, I think, and this is the thing to remember: a bear market is first and foremost a wonderful opportunity for the people who are prepared to look at fundamentals, we're prepared to look at these things long term, and are crucially prepared to be patient, because the patient are the ones who win out in the end. So, chance of a new bull run in the next, imminently, very low, I think.
Wow. I didn't. Sorry, I was just flabbergasted. I didn't know the outflows were going that strong. Excellent. So I will just I'll just kind of finish it up like this. There was a comment. Gareth Soloway was on Kitco News, and he thinks I was like listening to him because he's got a good outlook, and he's a little bit he's kind of like Ben. He's like people say, oh, you're such a bear, but he's like, no, I'm just bearish right now, but I'm bullish in the long term. And he talked about it. He said, look, he goes, recession's coming. There's going to be some problems, 13K, then we bounce up. And, who knows if that's true. But one of the things he did mention on, just to piggyback on what a guy was talking about, is that, hey, if it goes down, where's the money going to flow into? This is all the money in the world. Every little square is $100 billion. This is crypto one is at 244. So when I take a look at this, I'm just like, I just think there's a lot of room to run for the crypto space. I don't know if it's going to happen right away, but that's what I see coming forth. And then this is the answer to your question, Guy. I fixed $10 haircuts. This made no sense. And what it was this. The whole thing that we just talked about, the cryptoverse banks, the CBDCs, the rate hikes and everything else, it's a narrative pushed on us. And if you have a narrative, there's certain ways that you can win. And in those winnings that you're talking about is how you frame everything. So for business, it's the same thing. How do you win? You win on price, you win on quality, you win on availability, you win on ease. So this is an old story about barber that was opened up for years and years. Someone opened up right next to him for $10. And he lost most of his business. And all he had to do was just say this: look, I'll fix $10 haircuts because those guys suck. So it's the same thing here. When we talk about crypto and digital assets, we have to say, okay, the CBDCs are coming out, and yeah, they're really easy and really, simple to use. But just remember that in the bank runs, this and this and this can happen. Okay, yeah, it's a bit more difficult for the DEXs, but look, you're going to be the one that's in control, and it's super important because what could happen? Well, we don't know yet, but these are the things. So if we control the narrative, which is what politicians are great on, that's where everything changes. So this will lead me to my last piece: mentality. There's everything going on. How do you keep your sanity? Guy, I'll start with you, because right now it seems like everything's imploding, but how do you do it?
Before I answer that, Rob, can I that thing about haircuts reminded me that, especially $10 haircuts. Do you know that this week is the 10th anniversary, 10-year anniversary of the haircut from the banks in Cyprus? Do you remember
No
that?
kidding.
Where
10
they were, where they
anniversary?
all went, they all piled into to Greek bonds, I think. And when Greece restructured its debt, that all these Cypriot banks were just staring into the abyss, and they had to negotiate a loan with, I think it was mostly with Germany. I think the IMF was involved as well, and that they pumped billions into Cyprus to keep it afloat. But all Cypriot bank account holders had to take a haircut as well. So I think if you had under 100,000 euros, it was 6.75%. And if you had over 100,000 euros, it was 10% or 9.9, or one of the two. And this was the moment. And I think it was around that time that Bitcoin, this was a demonstration of just what banks can do, just how unreliable, untrustworthy they are. And it was around that time that Bitcoin, I think, saw one of its largest ever increases in percentage terms. It went from like $45 to $250, well over that or something in just a few weeks. So yes, sorry,
Awful.
completely sidetracked the conversation there, but so it was just haircuts. I was like, that was what I was reading about earlier. Haircuts, a different kind. How do I keep myself calm during times like this, during all this craziness? Well, I think I think the biggest freedom perhaps in the future will be the freedom to switch off, the freedom to go out and touch something real, touch some grass, enjoy nature, because I think we get, as our lives get more and more digitized, as the internet sucks us ever in, as we spend more and more time on our phones, as the metaverse, takes shape, all these sorts of things. I think real life, I think breathing fresh air, things like that, just having the freedom to be able to put your phone down and walk away from it all for a few minutes, a few hours, is going to be one of the most precious things. And that's already what I try and do. I was thinking to myself over the weekend, when everything was kicking off, if I'd gone out into the desert here in Dubai without my phone for the weekend, if I'd gone on Friday afternoon and come back Sunday evening, I'd have been none the wiser. I'd have had a lovely time. I wouldn't have all the craziness would have passed me by. So yeah, that's how I sort of keep myself sane. I switch off, because as I always say, the markets will be there when I come back. They never go anywhere. They never sleep. So yeah, I think the idea, just switch off and walk away from it all. Go and watch something growing. I'm growing tomatoes at the front of my house here in Dubai at the moment, and it just fills me with joy every morning and evening when I see them. So that's my answer. Yeah, go analog.
Perfect. Easy to say, hard to do. But if you can just step away, that's the best thing. Ben, same thing. How are you keeping your sanity with your 4 kids and constantly being sick and different problems with the markets?
I probably don't. It's probably in 2018, when I didn't have like a channel, the way I would keep my sanity dealing with crypto was I would just not look at it for like 3 months at a time.
That's pretty good.
I mean, I think there was a period from like March or something of 2018, March or April, until like August or September, about 6 months, where I barely even looked at the charts. I mean, I was also, doing other things at the time and I was distracted, but yeah, about 6 months. And so I think that's probably one way that people can get through all this stuff is, you can always come up with a strategy, right? Whether it's a DCA strategy or whatever. And and then just kind of forget about it for a while, and that's honestly how I've gotten through it in the past. Now this time I don't really have the luxury of doing that because of course I talk about crypto on a daily basis. But yeah, I mean I think like you're just getting out, doing stuff with friends, with family. That's what I mainly do. But yeah, maybe these times do chip away at my sanity sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. Well said. And I'll just tell everybody like this. Try to control the things that you can change and not worry about the things that you can't. And there's a lot of things in this market that you cannot. So just step away. You'll be a lot happier. And I know it's easy to say and hard to do, but I got to tell you, I had a couple friends with the USDC situation. They're like, hey, I just lost a ton of money. I'm like, did you sell? Well, it's going to go down to zero. I'm like, you know what? Give it 24 hours. We'll see what happens. And then all of a sudden, like, hey, that worked out pretty well. Didn't have to do anything. Yeah, because you can't control it. So everybody, that is it for today's show. Thanks so much for stopping by. We went pretty long, almost 55 minutes, which, well, I guess that's about normal. Now we'll do some questions and we'll go from there. Let's see. And then we'll get out of here. Smash and humiliate the like button before I wrench you. I got a lot of wrenches on my channel. That's just more fun. Let's see.
Humiliate the like button.
Weighted DCA. That's pretty good. And you know what? I will say one thing. And that question I asked about selling May and go away. I was thinking about doing these things because I'm like, we know that the recession's coming. So I'm like, why don't I just sell like 50% of my stuff because we know it's going to happen. And then I thought to myself, I'm like, okay, well, I also thought, that, Bitcoin would go to 150K and ETH would go to 10K last cycle. That didn't work out. So even though we're pretty sure things are going to happen, you never know. I'm just going to write it all out for the next 4-year cycles and see how it goes.
That's the thing, Rob, is like no one knows anything.
Yeah.
We don't know what's going to happen exactly. We have opinions, but you don't really know. And so you have to hedge the things you don't know.
Dude, it's so true. Oh, this is a good one. I did like this one. Question of Ben, will you continue the whale watching series on chain analysis, especially whale 3, which became whale 4, whatever it is now?
Yeah, I can do it. How about this? The next video I make, I'll do it on the whale watching series.
Nice. There was a good one. Any financial advice? No financial advice. That's the whole point of the show.
Come to entirely the wrong place.
Yeah, you're barking up the wrong.
Couldn't be more wrong.
Exactly. How about this one? DCA daily or weekly, Guy? Well, are you still dollar cost averaging or no?
No, not at the moment. But when I do, it'll be. I think it'll be weekly. I haven't got the focus for daily. You can set it, can't you? You can automate it. But yeah, I think weekly's fine.
Weekly's fine. Coming up. Ben, are you buying any Bitcoin now, or are you rarely getting into it?
I just had limit orders set at various like risk levels that I used back in 2022. So those got filled, but that's the thing. Like Bitcoin is the only thing in crypto that I've bought in over a year. Like I haven't touched anything. Like I haven't touched any Ethereum or any other altcoins. Like haven't been getting into any of that. So Bitcoin. And then as far as daily versus weekly, I think daily is too much for me to handle. I don't know that it would make that much of a difference. So I would say the question for me is probably more so between weekly and monthly. Because even doing it monthly is I think fine. So
I disagree with both of you. I am DCAing daily, and that's what I love about this show. All right. So last question. Did they already cover the SBF and Inner Circle stealing 1 billion? What? 1 billion each? Was a headline.
Someone was posting this in the comments earlier. I don't know what it's talking about, so I don't know if there was a headline this morning or not.
Guy, did you hear anything about that?
I think I heard something about it, yeah. But I sort of because I think we've heard stuff like this before, you know, billion-dollar loans before to him, hasn't it? I must say I kind of filed it away. I just see an SBF FTX headline and it sort of all merges into one, really. So I missed that a little bit, but
This
yeah,
is, yeah, I don't know.
it's all just such an ugly saga, isn't it?
It is.
Can I ask one thing, Rob? I think on this live streaming software that we're using, is there a way that we can tee up some sort of background fireworks for the day that Ben announces that he has bought something other than
Oh,
Bitcoin? Because that's going to be such a moment. That's going to be. I think we should have fireworks going off in the background, maybe champagne corks popping.
I can have. Well, this is mine when I jump in the pool when Bitcoin hits 100K, and
okay.
I no problem, absolutely no problem. I can make this happen at the touch of a button, no problem. That's whatsoever. All right.
I've said before. I think the altcoin market timing is probably going to be like Q3 or Q4 this year. It was the same thing back in the last cycle too. Is a lot of the altcoins, because remember, I'm more interested in when altcoins bottom against Bitcoin, not necessarily the US dollar pairs. And although the US dollar pairs could easily go lower as well, as they did in 2019 and 2020.
Yeah.
But the whole point is if you're going to put money in the cryptoverse, the blue chips make the most sense. And if the altcoin market is just likely going to bleed back to the blue chips, then what's the point of putting it in the altcoin market? Because you're taking on more risk, you're getting less reward, and so yeah. But I think that narrative could flip by the latter half of this year.
Gotcha. And you know what? We got to get out of here. But that was one thing that's, I'm gonna say everybody watch this video, because you talked about just denominating everything in Bitcoin and how it bleeds against alts. Just watch that video, link in the description. You can check it out. But guys, we've went an hour. I know you got stuff to do, so we'll get out of here. So again, thanks so much everybody for stopping by, watch the video, like and subscribe to these guys. Their channel's in the description. I mean, let's be honest, you probably do anyhow, but that's it. So thanks so much. We appreciate you. We'll see you on the next one.
See you next week, guys.
Adios.